Talk and rock radio, where friends meet at the intersection of life, inspiration, and music. Here's your host, Rick Kern.
Welcome, everyone, to Talk and Rock Radio. It's March 24th, 2021, and today we have a guy whose career spans over 50-plus years as a musician, composer, record producer, studio engineer, photographer, and now an actual working cowboy. Welcome, Terry Manning.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for the funny introduction.
Well, it is true. You are a working cowboy now. I mean, you threw us all a real surprise on this one.
Well, I do literally wear a cowboy hat, or what people call a cowboy hat, every day. And I'm doing horses and donkeys and dogs and hay and all that sort of stuff. So I guess you're right.
Well, don't forget Ike and Tina. You got them in there too.
Well, we've moved them. They're out at Landmark Mercantile. Anyone can go visit them. They're where there are more goats, and they're much happier out there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. In case y'all didn't pick up on that, Ike and Tina were his goats. In fact, I remember about 3 or so Super Bowls ago, you gave me a phone call, and we were talking about, I guess it has to do with the fact that my dad was a veterinarian here in El Paso, and it was one of those moments where you're getting ready to have a newborn goat in your family and needed some help from me while I'm trying to watch the Super Bowl. So anyway, but
well, I knew you knew more than I knew.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you with us today, Terry. And I wanted to first of all say that must have been a defining moment for you when you were in middle school and had the iconic Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac as one of your schoolmates, and that's got to be a defining moment of your future in music. What do you say about that?
Well, one could say that, but to me at the time it wasn't. I didn't know who she would be.
Well,
later.
She didn't either.
No, she sat in front of me at Bassett Junior High School, up on. It's not on Alabama, but it's near Alabama up there.
Right.
And I had a little crush on her and would, pull at her pigtails and stuff like that. But nobody knew who she would be. And in fact, years later, well after I had a career in music and she had a massive career in music, did I even stop and realize that's who that was. I only knew her as Stephanie Nicks. I never thought of Stevie,
For sure. Yeah, well, she has quite a career, and from what I understand, going to make a comeback. From some of the people that I've been following with her. A good friend of mine knows Mickey real well, and in fact, we'll be doing an episode with Ron Johnston in the future, and he's been working with those guys some off and on, and talks to Stevie now and then. But anyway, back to you. This is the most incredible 50-year span of tremendous success that you've had in so many different things, not just music, but as a photographer, and you've got it going, man. That's all I can say about Terry Manning. You have got it going.
Well, that's kind to say it. I never feel like I'd get done with anything. But I've just been lucky to be a lot of lucky places where other people were doing great things and I was around it. So whatever, it's been fun, and it's still fun. And it literally did start in El Paso.
Yeah, talk about that.
Well, I was here from about the age, we moved here when I was 10 or 11, and we're here for almost 5 years. And, right when you're turning into a teenager, right when you're starting to be 12, 13, 14, is when your world is really changing and you're leaving from your parents' world and sort of making your own world, starting to have thoughts of what I'll do in the future and whatever. And I just loved music. And what really turned me, the very first thing that was like an electric lightning bolt, was a dance that they had at a class dance from Bassett Junior High. It's now called Bassett Middle School, but Bassett Junior High back then. And I couldn't wait to go here because there was going to be a band at the dance. I had never heard a live band before. And lo and behold, the live band was Bobby Fuller. And I go to this class dance, and wham, there are electric guitars and amps and drums pounding and bass playing and people singing over a PA. And I was just, oh my God, look at this. Listen to this. And that really did change. I was already into music and got a guitar the previous Christmas from Montgomery Ward's, which my parents had bought. I think it was in the Five Points area. They had gone and bought this acoustic guitar, an airline acoustic guitar from Montgomery Ward's, and I was learning a few chords. I knew about 3 or 4 chords and trying to play along with records. And there was Bobby Fuller, already fully formed, playing great, singing great, just a full electric band. And it just ignited that whole thing. And I actually went up at that dance when they finished probably the second set, or for what finished a set, ready to take a break before the next set. I went up to Bobby and said, "Hi, I'm Terry. I've got a guitar. I've been learning songs. What would you think if I sat in with you?" And, most people would have gone, "You dumb little junior high baby kid, get out of here. We're busy." But no, Bobby wasn't like that. He just said, "What do you know, son? Tell me about it." And I couldn't believe it. So I said, "Well, I've learned Peggy Sue and I've learned Donna." And he said, "Well, let's sing them." And he gave me his guitar, first time I'd ever touched an electric guitar in my whole life, and had never played through an amp. And he handed me his Stratocaster and put it on me, and he reached over and got the other guitarist's guitar, but probably, I don't know if it was Jim Reese at that time, but whoever was in the band early on there got his guitar, and we actually sang Donna and Peggy Sue I sang it to my junior high class.
That is so cool.
Class. And Bobby sort of accompanied me to cover all the horrible mistakes I was making, probably. But right then I knew, okay, this is going to be what I'm going to do, or at least part of it.
This is such a great thing that happened with you, because in my first episode that just aired a couple of days ago,
I've heard it.
Thank you. And I my similar situation. I was 13 years old when I saw my very first band, and it was the Bobby Fuller 4 at the Little Dipper Lounge, and I had the same result as you did. I'm going, oh my gosh, this group is just incredible. So, well,
they were so good. There were local bands everywhere, every town, city, out in the country, whatever, in the U.S., maybe the whole world, or at least the Western world, had rock music bands just springing up. But Bobby wasn't just a band. They were really, really good, really tight. He was a master. I mean, he didn't overlook anything. He was such an attention to detail guy, and it was like hearing a record. It was really, really good live band. So I know what you heard at the Skylanes there, and what many people heard, and I think it started a lot of people locally in the El Paso area. Rod Crosby, probably, a lot of good people sort of came from that same time.
That's right. Well, what's so amazing about Bobby is that he was so talented because he played so many things. I mean, he could play guitar, he played piano, but he was a drummer. I mean,
he started as a drummer.
He was just an incredible drummer. So no pressure there, Dalton and Larry Thompson and all the guys that played with him. And there were several.
And let's not leave out his brother Randy. Randy was a great guitarist, but took on the bass when Bobby started, and on guitar. And I swear, Randy's one of the best, he's so solid, deep, and powerful bass player and great singer as well.
Well,
so
and
there was just a lot of talent going on there.
Yeah, even after the demise of Bobby leaving us, Randy in the Randy Fuller group, he was a guitar player then, and Doug Neal was playing bass, and and Jim Wagner on drums, and I mean that was a great group. And of course later on we know about the New Buffalo Springfield, their involvement with that, and Rich Furay and those guys, from Poco and Buffalo Springfield and all that. So quite a continued story with a great fuller talented family. Those guys were. Yeah, they were the trendsetters. They got it going in El Paso, and
well, I think El Paso, and we'll say that a lot. El Paso. Here we go. But we're both there. You're from here. I've lived here and am now living back here and loving it. But I think it was one of those little pockets that happened in a few places. Chicago, Memphis, of course, being big cities with a lot of it. L.A. And there were a couple of places, smaller cities, but still cities that had little pockets of it. But El Paso was one of those, and I think Bobby was the leader of it and the cause of a lot of it, where it was better than it was in other places, and it shows even to this day when you listen back to the things that recorded here at that time.
On the run, taking over the world at the point of a gun. He fought the law, but nobody won. And then somewhere along the way, as the sky went from blue to gray, he thought one more time of that place he'd left behind, the West Texas skyline. Just as fast as he can. Yeah, 22 months was a lifetime then. And went somewhere along the way, as he tried to not fade away, he thought one last time of that home he'd left behind. Oh, that West Texas skyline. Oh, West Texas skyline. Dust of the Chihuahuan desert are starting to blow, and in the midst of the Franklin Mountains it's beginning to snow. Oh, and the lights of the Mission Valley shine down below. And cries no to, all the while thinking about a you-know-who. And went somewhere along our way, as we remember back in the day, we'll think of all good people and better times. Oh, in that West Texas skyline. Oh, far West Texas skyline.
When we talk to a lot of the people that don't live in El Paso, but yet they identify with the fact that El Paso has always had such great musicians, and we always hear the phrase West Texas rock and roll or West Texas sound. And of course, you did an album production called West Texas Skyline. What do you think? How would you interpret why El Paso is so recognized as being so unique in itself, as far as not just great musicians, but our West Texas sound? How would you pinpoint that?
That will take the rest of our hour. So
yeah, I hear you.
I honestly think there's several factors. First of all, it because it is the pass through the mountains, going from east to west or north to south. Back in the day, it became the place the railroads came through, the place people had to come if they were traveling by horse or wagon or pre-automobile, and of course airplanes and things. I think it was one of those central places. It was pulling from Mexico to the south and from New Mexico to the west, and of course all over this area of West Texas. It was becoming a big city at that time. So there was that, but I think another important factor is we're so darn far from anywhere else.
True.
Everyone here became almost a country to itself, a state to itself, whatever. West Texas became its own separate place. High schools. I've never seen a town where people, the first thing when you meet somebody is, where'd you go to high school? What was your high school?
Exactly.
They're so into it, because locally, that's almost all you could play in sports was other high schools in your area. You weren't going to take a 350-mile trip wherever, or 500 miles to San Antonio or whatever it is up to Albuquerque or something. You just weren't going to do that at that time, at least in high school. So everyone stayed here, and it almost developed on its own. And there just were so many influences. I think the Latino culture, the Mexican culture being right across with great yet different types of music, sort of filtering in. And then a very important guy to me, in several ways, was a guy named Steve Krosno, who was the big local DJ at the time. And he embraced Mexican culture. He embraced all the rock bands. He loved Bobby Fuller. Yet there he was, the number one rated DJ on KELP 920 AM at the time. And everybody listened. Everybody loved him. And he had dances. He had hops, fostered it all. There was another guy named Johnny Fairchild who was a DJ, and he started his own club, the Golden Key Club. Bobby started his own club, the Rendezvous, and it just sort of built and built and built. And everybody, but this was here. It was isolated. We were separate. I hope that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And for those people out there that are listening to this right now, El Paso, yeah, we're way out here in West Texas, all by ourselves, but don't cut us short. We've got 42 high schools in this city, so we have a pretty good contingency here of students that always can contribute to the music scene and everything, and have and gone on to do great things themselves. So.
Well, I the other day a few months back, we were driving somewhere out of town, probably to Dallas, to the airport or something. And I always think of San Antonio almost as a sister city. It's still in West Texas. It's still got the Mexican culture as well. It was a bigger city than what else was around it. I've always thought, well, they're right just next to us almost. I get on the interstate and there's the sign, San Antonio, 520 miles. And I thought, gee, 520 miles?
And they're all there.
You gotta be kidding.
They're all there. I've done it numerous times.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about when you were leaving El Paso. Now, that was around 67 or so?
No, I hate to even say it, but it was 1963.
Was it 63? Really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. So that was would have been your freshman year at Austin, or?
I was in my sophomore year.
Sophomore year, okay.
Yeah, second year at Austin High School. And I've done the whole freshman year, which was ninth grade, and into the 10th grade. at Austin, and we left in end of October of '63.
And that was your dad's move from here to Memphis? Is that what took you out of here?
Yeah, that's correct. He was a minister, and they didn't. The church he was part of didn't tell you where to go. They let you go choose. But every few years, he would move us because his whole deal was building new churches. He was almost an architect, subcontractor, minister kind of guy. He had got an offer from Fairhope, Alabama, and one other place I've forgotten, and Memphis, Tennessee. And I got excited because he told us that. And I said, "Oh, Memphis, there's a record company there, Staxx Records."
You bet.
Oh, so go to Memphis. And I don't know if he probably chose it for his reasons.
Right.
So sure enough, we moved to Memphis in 1963, and I went almost as quick as I could. Once I was in high school and settled and whatever, I took my guitar and went to Staxx Records on the bus as far as I could go and walked the rest, and went in and just said, "I'm here to work. Let's go.
Give me a broom," right?
Well, yeah, exactly. I wouldn't, and I've got to say, I've said Steve Krosno, and by the way, I'll go back a little. He was my first employer. He hired me to come work with him at KELP and on his remote broadcasts he would do. And this little TV show, black and white at the time, TV show he had. So he was my first employer. Steve Krosno, quite an influence. Bobby Fuller. But my next big influence, I met at Staxx that very day that I went in. The woman, Jeannie Parker, who had let me in, she was on the front desk that day, was being kind. And she said, "Okay, son, we've heard your story. Probably best you come back in a few years." And I was about to leave, oh, great, here I go. I didn't make it. And a guy walks through, tall, good-looking guy, just a few years older than me, but I thought he was an adult, So he said, "Hey, what you got there, son?" I said, "It's a Telecaster in the case." So he sat down on a chair, pulled out my guitar. We're playing it. He's talking some stuff. His name was Steve Cropper, and he became later the lead guitarist for Booker T and the MGs, the producer of so many things at Staxx, the co-writer of things like Midnight Hour, Dock of the Bay, so many big hits, Knock on Wood, so many things he wrote or co-wrote. One of the biggest guys in the Memphis music scene in history. And I happened to bump into him that day, or him into me. So he gave me a job as an intern, unpaid, doing tape copies down in their little copy room.
Fantastic.
Just
and then
crazy.
And of course, after that, it just went uphill, upstairs. In fact, your office became Isaac Hayes' old office, right?
Yeah, that's right. I stayed at Staxx, as I also played in a local band there, and then also worked at another studio called Ardent, which is the biggest independent studio in Memphis, but all at the same time. But at Staxx, years later from this, when I first walked in, I moved over there and took over Isaac Hayes' old office, which had previously been Slim Jenkins' joint before Staxx moved in. It was a bar. So I took that over, and until they closed because of bankruptcy and all the problems they had at the end, that was my office. So it was just an amazing ride.
It really was for you, Terry. And, just to mention some of the other great artists that you worked with directly, besides Booker T and Isaac Hayes, there was Otis Redding, the Fabulous Thunderbirds, Joe Cocker, Al Green, Shakira, George Thorogood, Boxtops, and of course Led Zeppelin, and one of my favorites is ZZ Top. You want to talk
That's
a little
true.
bit about some of your favorites there? Which one of those are really standouts that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, all those you mentioned were great to work with, and there were lots of others. And of course, I worked with many groups that didn't make it and become big stars. We all do. Anyone that's had a hit record or whatever as a producer or engineer worked with 25 things that didn't make it to get to that one, maybe. But I was so lucky to just bump into great talent. One you didn't mention was Lenny Kravitz. He's still one of my best friends. I've done several things with Lenny. ZZ Top was a very big one, of course. That came about, I'll go back a little more, that came about because of Led Zeppelin. I had become a friend of Jimmy Page, who at the time was in the Yardbirds, and the local band I played with in Memphis, well, regional band, was then called Lawson and Four More, and we had opened a show for the Yardbirds. And so I went back and got to meet the guys and all, and then when they came back to America, I went to several of their shows, and then brought Jimmy back in the car with me to Memphis, and came to my studio, Ardent studio at the time, and looked at all the guitars and amps, and we talked and just became very close friends, stayed in touch over the years, so that when he was forming Led Zeppelin, he would send me the early cassettes of what they were doing, and I was going, yeah, man, this is great. It's different and it's super. And then they turn into the biggest band in the world, I guess, or second biggest if you count the Beatles as the same type of music.
Mm-hmm.
So we were good friends, and Jimmy called me at one point and said they had done their first two albums in England and started recording their third album in England. And he called me and said, we're not finished. We've got overdubs to do, we've got mixing to do, we've got mastering to do, and we've got a tour of the U.S. booked. Can you help me? So he would, of course I said yes, and he had seen my studio there already. So he would fly in between shows, and we would overdub whichever band member needed an overdub done. And then finally, then he would fly back to get to the next show and then fly back into Memphis. And we did that several times until it was time to mix. Then we mixed the whole Led Zeppelin 3 album, and I took it to a mastering place in Memphis, Mastercraft, and mastered it to vinyl. And so that came out, and it goes to #1 in the world. It's doing great. Billy Gibbons happened to hear it and loved the sound of it and found out that it had been done in Memphis. And he thought, wow, all the blues from Memphis, all the rock music in Memphis, and now this. So he looked me up and said, can I work with you? And I again said, sure. I had just discovered ZZ Top listening to the radio. I heard late one night about midnight on the way home from a store, I heard Sure Got Cold After the Rain Fell off their second album, I believe. A slow, bluesy, gorgeous piece. And I heard it and just pulled off the side of the road and thought, who is this? And it was Billy Gibbons and ZZ Top. So when he called and said, do we want to work? I said, I know you. Yes, yes. So I guess the next 18 or 19 years, we worked together on all the big ZZ Top albums right there in Memphis.
God, that's so cool, man. That is such a great story. Our son is a photographer for Getty Images, and of course
Sure.
he's got fond memories too of working with those guys and shooting their photos rather. And got to be careful when you say that, shooting them. Well, in 1992, you go down to the Nassau, Bahamas, and introduce yourself to the Compass Point Studios, and talk a little bit about that and how that went for another 20 years.
Yeah, time just zips on by here.
I know.
Yeah, after all those years of working with ZZ Top and lots of other groups, I got tired of the cold winters in Memphis. And by the way, all the time I'm in Memphis, every day I'm thinking of El Paso. Where are the mountains? Why are all these big trees everywhere? Why can't I get back to the desert? So I found out about Compass Point Studios in Nassau, which was owned by Chris Blackwell, who also owned Island Records and had discovered and produced Bob Marley and U2 and Joe Cocker and Steve Winwood and Traffic and just so many great acts that were on Island. And so I had worked on one Island record in the 70s and had met Chris over in England at his Basing Street Island Studios. We had met just a time or two and had talked a little. So I got to thinking, I should leave Memphis and go to a place where it's warmer. So I'll check out this Island studio, Compass Point Studios in Nassau, Bahamas. Checked it out. Talked to Chris, and he said, come on down. I need somebody to take it over and become a partner. So I flew down there in my plane and met Chris, and looked it over, and it needed stuff done. It was starting to go down a little bit. He wasn't accepting clients because didn't have anybody running it. So I said, sure. We became partners in the studio, and I ran it for over 20, almost 25 years, I guess. And boy, we had the clients in there: Mariah Carey, Julio Iglesias, Jimmy Buffett, REM. Oh gosh, the list could go. I can't even start to list the people. There's so many huge acts, that Rolling Stones, AC/DC, just insane, the acts that came through Compass Point. But it was quite a revelation, because I was now not just a producer or engineer renting a studio or using my own studio. I was now a studio proprietor, and other people came into my studio, and oh my God, I had to learn all this stuff about treating clients and how to book airplanes for people and where to put them up, and hotels and meals and all the stuff I hadn't thought about that studios do for people. Right. So that became another very heavy career.
Well, it's a tremendous part of your story, though. I mean, first of all, where it's at, it's just so incredible. And of course, not too long ago, you pulled everything out of there and packed it all up and brought it to El Paso. So that's the conclusion of that story, right?
Yeah, and as much as I love the Bahamas, it's a great place to visit. Absolutely, a wonderful vacation spot. But when you're in another country every day, I had someone say to me once, whenever they were trying to fill me in on what it would be like to live there, they said, wherever you get your mail, it isn't paradise. Trust me. And I found out that's true. Once you actually live there and your mail and bills and everything come there, you're subject to the laws or lack of laws in a very small country. It's not as big as Little Rock, Arkansas, the whole country, and you've got a prime minister that's sort of like a small town mayor almost.
Right.
And they just do what they want, and they control things the way they want it. And you're always a foreign interloper in a way. So after years and years of it, and just I'd had enough. Okay, let's get back to the good old USA, but better than that, let's get back to the good old Republic of Texas.
There you go.
Better than that, let's go to West Texas and El Paso. So I just did.
Well, and one thing that you probably are glad that you don't have to worry about anymore is the hurricanes over there. I remember a few years ago when you had some hit and there was some damage there on one of your cars and palm trees coming down on your place and everything. So that's got to be a relief for you to not have to worry about that anymore.
Oh, absolutely. While I was there, we went through 4 major hurricanes. I mean, really unbelievable what they're like. And I'm very glad to not see that anymore. Because even as bad as the hurricane itself was the worry of them all summer long, every year. You're watching the map. Here comes another system. Oh, it just missed us. Uh-oh, this one. Uh-oh. Oh, it moved too. And oh, this one's hitting us.
I know.
Really not fun.
I know. I think it was last year or year before when I called you to find out how things were going on down there, if you were sustaining any damage at that time or whatever, and I think it was minimal, but boy, it sure didn't look very good on TV and on the Weather Channel.
Yeah, the weather can be very scary when it wants to be. That's one thing I do love about El Paso. We don't have tornadoes. We don't have earthquakes. We don't have hurricanes. We got wind and dust storms, but I'll take it over all those other things.
And it's for not very long. So, yeah, I'm with you on that one, man. I've traveled all over the U.S., and I've seen 20-foot snow drifts and had to travel in it to get to the next gig. And I know what that's like, too. And, El Paso, it's not so bad. We love the weather here, and the people are very nice, so.
Absolutely. Best place in the world.
Well, you've told us some interesting information about your music career. Now, Tell us something about Terry Manning, about yourself, that most of us don't know about Terry.
Oh, I don't know. If you asked my wife Janet, we could probably hear some really terrible things.
I can,
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know. Well, just things about me. I guess if we have to say things, I'm a vegan. I've been a full vegetarian almost my whole life, and became a full vegan about 20 years ago. I work out every chance I can. I get all the proper sleep. I don't drink alcohol or do any kind of drugs or anything. I'm kind of a real boring person, but it lets you work. It lets you work early, and it lets you work late, and it lets you work a lot longer than other people seem to get to work.
And hopefully it's going to keep you on this earth for a lot longer time,
Well, I hope.
Yeah, me too, man. We all hope for that.
Thanks.
We all hope for something like that, for sure, for our futures. But I gotta share with everybody about a great period of time when I started the Border Legends series here in El Paso. It was in 2009, and I think it was probably our 5th or 6th show, maybe 7th. You would probably remember that better. I think it was
the 5th.
Was it the
2013?
5th? Yeah, and I had gotten hold of you about coming to El Paso and bringing your sound and doing your thing, and I think West Texas Skyline Project was not in the can yet, but just about, and I think that was when you came in and did your tribute to Bobby Fuller.
Yeah, I felt like I owed so much to Bobby because he didn't instantly reject me and send me away when I just boldly, stupidly, naively walked up to him and said hey and met him and all that. Because I would then hang out some. I mean, I know I had to be a pest. It had to be because I was a fair number of years younger. And at that time, I don't know how many years, but let's say it was 4 or 5, 6 years younger, but wouldn't be anything once we're grown up. But at that time, that's a lot of space between. And he sort of took me not under his wing so much as I kept bugging him, and he let me bug him. But I would ask him all these questions about writing songs and producing and what are you doing there and why did you play it that way? Just all these things and he was so intelligent. He was very smart, and he knew the answers to those things. He wasn't just, no offense to any other person in music at all, but he wasn't just some dumb band guy, and I don't mean that people in bands are dumb at all, but occasionally, people are just doing things because they're doing them, but he knew it. He had analyzed what he was doing. He had a philosophy of it, and he knew what he wanted at a young age. Think of it. Here's a guy who had his own, in his either late teens or very early 20s, had his own nightclub, his own record label, his own studio. It's nuts. And he was on the charts in the whole region and number 1 for years before he went to LA and made the whole world his place. But just an amazing guy. So I felt like I owed him something. And of course, there's no way I could tell him that now because he was tragically murdered in 68, I believe. 66, right. Mm-hmm. And so no one could say anything to him anymore. But I thought, that's something I can do. I'll probably ruin the songs. It'll never be as good as what Bobby can do. But I'll just do a modern take now that we have newer ways of recording, Pro Tools, of course, digital platforms and everything, and new ways that we're doing things that he didn't have then. I'll do it that way, and I'll do it as good as I can, and just as a tribute. And maybe it will get people to listen to his music again if they hear it. So hopefully that worked out. It did really well as an album. I know we got up in the top 5 on the AOR charts, American Oriented Radio, I think that's called, whatever that is, AOR Radio.
Well, he was
album-oriented rock. That's it.
He was really a very kind and sensitive guy. He like he was with you. He knew his stuff, and he was very giving to spend the time with you to help you out. That memory that you have of him, certainly it resounds in my experience of being on the road with my last band. And Robin Zander would come in night after night and watch our band play. And of course, Robin Zander from Cheap Trick.
Sure.
And he would get my guitar player, Danny Miller, off to the side on the breaks. I mean, poor guy wanted 15 minutes to be able to go and get a drink, go to the bathroom, whatever. And he'd get him off the side of the stage and talk to him about his licks and how he was doing this and that. And he wanted to learn from him. And he gave his time, because here's a guy that of course we didn't know Cheap Trick was really what they were at that time yet. They were getting there, but not anywhere near what they are today. And anyway, so it's always great when you can get somebody like Bobby and Danny and other people that are willing to give of themselves and share it and help their talent, help them grow to be able to learn and stuff,
You know, that goes really, in my mind, that goes all the way back to even the Middle Ages, where there would be the guilds and the craftsmanship, and the young people would be put in to learn. That's how you learned. They learned from people who were already doing it. And I think that's so important in music and probably many other arts and maybe even any other businesses, is to find someone who is doing it that you admire because you think they're doing it well, and learn from them if you can. I was lucky that several people that I really admired did take their time and show me things that I couldn't have learned otherwise. Schools didn't teach it back then, at least, if they do now even. And a lot of the things you know from doing it aren't the things you learn in school, even trade schools. Someone who's doing it right then, right on the job, and you can see what works and even what doesn't work. Maybe there was a mistake made and they learned and you learned too. And I just think that's so important. And it was so lucky to have a guy like Bobby, like Steve Cropper, like Steve Crosno, a later guy, John Fry, Al Bell at Staxx Records, people that taught me things I couldn't have known otherwise.
And they taught you well. They taught you well, Terry, because when you've invited Sharon and I to go out, Sharon, my wife, and I to go out and be with you at Sonic Ranch. I know one of your sessions a couple years ago with a Canadian group, and really great group of guys. Got to know them that afternoon, and just watching you at that board was magical, And I've got soon on my site, talkingrockradio.com, my website, you can see some pictures of Terry in action. I've even got some little snippet videos that I'm going to put on there that he doesn't even know I have, that shows you in action, and it's like a mad scientist in his lab. You know exactly what you're doing on that huge board and everything that you're doing, and it's quite a treat for inquisitive eyes and minds to see you at work.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. It's funny. People used to come in and see the great big recording consoles that we used to have, and some places still have. And they would say, how do you know how to operate all of those knobs? It looks like a jet plane cockpit. And really, I would try to explain to them, well, see, top to bottom, they're modules. Each one of those is exactly the same, so I only have to learn one of them.
And the rest of it just makes it more impressive, right? Back to the Border Legends, that show, I remember so vividly that you brought a cast of incredible players. Jethro Tull's Christine Gangelhoff on flute, on bass, your buddy Leo Valvasori, incredible bass player, really plays in the groove, and your horn section, your drummer, your rhythm section, everybody was just top flight that night, and it was. I tell you what, I don't know how many standing ovations you got, but it was a lot of fun. It really was.
Oh, well, thank you. It was so much fun, and yeah, all the musicians that work with, that whenever I do, of course, haven't played for a while now. No one has for the pandemic. But anyway, when I do play again, hopefully, and have played before, there's nothing that beats a really good musician. And I was very lucky to be able to put together, I've got a group of musicians out of Memphis who are fantastic. They've played with lots of other people and lots of big stars, not much better than me. but they're real professionals. They know what to do. And to have them behind you, nothing can beat that. You know what that's like. You're the guy banging the beat out behind people. So,
well, you know
how good that can be.
Well, I really do. And the thing is, you, because of your exposure to so many great players and session players, you've got probably a cast of thousands to pull from out there that you can bring in any time. And I know the second year that you came back to Border Legends and played with us, you did a rockabilly tribute, and this time you brought a bunch of your Memphis buddies with you. Well, no, you didn't on that one. You did your Memphis.
Oh, yeah,
sound.
We had the best of the local guys.
Which I recruited for you. I got.
You did, yeah.
I got Frank Zona for you, and then I got Eric Bozeman on drums, and
Yep.
We got a guy in from Las Cruces. I'm trying to remember his name. I can't remember him right offhand.
If you hadn't asked me, I could tell you.
We got Glenn Leffler on guitar with you that night, and I think you had a 1 or 2 hour rehearsal session with them. But just to show how great they are, how good of players they are. They're obviously like session players. You sent them the charts in advance, and they went through it. I think you had 1 or 2 little rehearsals over at Star City Studios, and next thing
Just
you know,
one,
you're on stage performing, and you would have thought you guys had been together for a year, so it was quite good. And that one, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say that in the rehearsal, everything was okay. We were all doing fine. But when the show goes on, everybody turns it up a notch. Like Eric on drums, just all of a sudden, wham, wow, where did that come from? Just perfect, right on it. And I guess the same with me. I guess once the crowd's out there and you're in front, you get on the stage, there's a switch that clicks, and it's got to be good, and it's got to be now. And everybody professionally, those guys, of course, that you just mentioned, know how to do that.
Well, they're all really pros. Eric, of course, he's been playing drums, and he runs Buddy's Star City Studios, Buddy Winston's Star City Studios for him.
Sure.
And his history of who he's played with goes way back there. He played with Stevie Wonder and just a whole bunch of great players. And Michael Jackson, in the This Is It tour before Michael died, he had chosen Eric to either play percussion or drums. I'm not sure which one. Might have been just the percussion part of it. But anyway, he turned it down. Of all the players that he could have asked to play with him, he turned him down because he was here with a young family, had lots of students. Talk about committed to teaching kids. Eric is one of those.
Eric is. There's only one word for Eric, and it's great.
Yep. Yeah, he's one of the great ones. There's no doubt about it, and we're lucky to have him here. I've performed on stage with him with PT and the Cruisers, and he is just one of those very special people, and we love him. He's another Terry Manning. We're lucky to have him here in our city. But that was a great show too, because you did a tribute to rockabilly that night, and I know that is something that's true. To your heart, as far as your love for music is the rockabilly sound and the legendary guys that go so far back that started
it. It came out of Memphis, which is
right.
Of course my other hometown, other than El Paso, but it all came from there with Billy Lee Riley and Jerry Lee Lewis. I guess they all had Lee as a middle name. Anyway, all the early. They were almost like punk rockers. They took rock and just turned it into a hillbilly wild fest.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that stemmed from Elvis, and his.
Yep, really.
Just some real great players back in those days, and it's still the kind of music that you never get tired of. I've been in contact with Jerry Allison, from the Crickets, and this is another one of those legendary people. In fact, I think he even commented about my first episode, with Dalton. But this is it's a lot of good history, man. A lot of fun. I'm so glad you're here and back where your roots are, where your love, for where it all started, with the music scene and where you were, well, you grew up here,
It's just coming full circle, really. And let's go back one tiny notch there where you mentioned Jerry Allison from the Crickets. People think of him as, Buddy Holly's drummer and whatever, but remember, he had a single that's one of the great singles of all time, Wild Child.
Yep.
Was his single record, the first one to put it out, and he co-wrote a lot of Buddy's things. So these people, there's some serious talent in West Texas.
I'm trying to remember, Terry, were you there the night that I had brought Peggy Sue in from Buddy Holly's Peggy Sue?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, wasn't she a sweet person?
She was. I got to talk to her, meet her, bought her book, and got her to sign it.
Yeah, she was a really a great lady, and it was so nice for her to come to El Paso and share her stories. I'd set up a little gathering one night for her to come and talk to them, and we had hors d'oeuvres and everything, and it was great. She got to sell her book, and then of course she the main thing was to be at Border Legends and sell her new book, her autobiography on Peggy Sue, What Happened, and so that was.
And she was Allison's girlfriend. She wasn't Buddy's girlfriend.
That's right. A lot of people thought. I don't know. They went to high school together.
I don't know how. Yeah, indeed. I don't know how true the story is, but I love the story. That the Peggy Sue, the song, was originally written as Cindy Lou.
That's right.
And he was going to record it sort of with a bossa nova type beat, or Brazilian type beat, or something, Cindy Lou. And then he asked Allison if he could play it all paradiddle, the whole song. And he said, "Sure, I can." And Buddy said, "I'll only do it if you name the song after my girlfriend Peggy Sue. If I do it," and he did it, and it became Peggy.
Yeah, it was an incredible.
I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that story. I don't. I may have read that. I don't know, but I know Peggy Sue. Back to her. The first time I spoke to her, I had shared with her an idea that I had because we were going to be doing a radio show with Jackson Polk and Melissa Sargent, the El Paso History Radio Show, which I'd been on there numerous times with them. But I had this idea; it would be kind of cool to when we were doing our annual show, they would let us go on there and promote the Border Legends event. And so that one particular day, I had Rod Crosby on there with me, my co-producer, and I had already arranged, and I didn't tell Rod about this, but Jackson and Melissa were in on it, and I said, I'm going to Skype call Peggy Sue, and I'd already arranged it with her, and but we had not told her exactly what was going on yet. Rod had brought in his guitar, and so next thing I know, I've got my iPhone on, and there's Peggy Sue, and I didn't tell her what we were going to do. I just told her we were going to have her on the radio show. So she came on, and all of a sudden, Rod gets his guitar out and sings Peggy Sue to Peggy Sue. And that was a lot of fun. But I think the best part was when she came in and to El Paso to our show, and I walked her up to the stage and had a chair sitting there for her, and she sat right in front of Rod, and he actually performed it with his band, Rod Crosby and the Intruders, singing Peggy Sue to Peggy Sue, and that was when it's official now. This was a good thing. So it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, that was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, my friend, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else that you would like to share that we haven't covered? I know we could probably talk another hour or two.
One thing I will mention is my photography.
Oh, yes.
And of course, we've been on hold for most of this year because of the pandemic. Again, you can't go do things, or so many businesses they just weren't working. But once things are back open next year, we're hoping to have some really good museum exhibits, several places in the country. There's some great things in the works on large format photographs. The big big size, 4 by 6 feet or bigger. They're going to be in several really good places. I can't divulge what they are yet because they're not all set in stone, the dates and everything yet. We've already had to move dates because people thought we'd be open by now. Well, we're not, fully, but we will be. So look for that coming too, hopefully.
I remember when you were doing your photographs that, how expensive it is to print, especially in large format. And so I remember where you won that battle. You just went out and bought you a great big old printer. And I remember when you got it set up there at your other house in Kansas, you were talking about how it occupied pretty much the whole dining room.
Yep.
Right?
It takes a whole room. It's gigantic.
Yeah. So you've got it here now with you?
No, it's still there. I still have the house there. I might move it here, if possible. I don't know yet. It's a lot of work to do that, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, it's cool. I'm glad you were able to, work that out where you didn't have to go and spend all that money anymore to do the printing, because that does get pretty costly. But
yeah, it's still expensive, but at least you're controlling the expenses this way.
Right. Well, my friend, I think we're gonna wrap this episode up. I'd like to do another one with you sometime, but this one was
Sure.
a lot of fun. I want to thank you for taking a little bit of your time. Tell Janet we said hey from over here, and and we need to get together real soon. Okay.
Absolutely, and same hi to Sharon and the whole family, and it's been a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Terry. I'd like to thank El Paso History Radio Show, Barbara Gibbon Bainey's Remember an El Paso Win, the El Paso History Alliance, and Kent 98 Radio for their interest and support of Talkin' Rock Radio. Tell all your friends about the show because without you, our mission is only half done. This is Rick Kern signing off. Be kind to each other, everybody, and we'll see you next time.